Welcome to The Making of, the podcast from Swansea University that takes you behind the scenes of some remarkable success stories. In each episode, we sit down with extraordinary people to discover how they reached the very top of their fields, the highs, the lows, and the lessons they've learned and found along the way. I'm Andy Bush. I studied at Swansea University between 94 and 98. And in this episode, we are delighted to be joined by Lara Hallett. Lara graduated in 2007 with a BSc in psychology and has gone on to have an amazing career as a diplomat. Her postings have included being the Deputy Consul General in Los Angeles and a career that has taken her all around the world in both the public and private sector. It's an honor to have her on the podcast to talk about how her time at the university has helped shape the person she is today. Lara, welcome to The Making of.
Hello, Andy. How are you?
Very, very good. Great to chat to you. Thank you for your time. Please tell us then a little bit about your current role and what your kind of day-to-day responsibilities are right now.
Of course. So I'm working in the Foreign Office as a diplomat, as you mentioned there, in the US and Canada department. And what an interesting time it is, I will say that, to be working as a diplomat in the US and Canada department. I will caveat that and say I'm just about to finish maternity leave. So the real exciting stuff has happened a little bit whilst I've been on maternity leave. But that's not to say that I had such an amazing posting, as you mentioned there, in Los Angeles just before I went off on maternity leave during the elections, the general elections, as you can imagine. Fascinating stuff. Both kind of, there was statewide elections as well in the midterms while I was out there, as well as the kind of the general elections. And so I've got a lot to say about that should you be interested. But what an interesting time to be representing the UK in the US that was, to say the least.
Oh no, I mean it's absolutely fascinating, and what an interesting time to have been there as well. How did it feel? Because there seemed to be like a real battle between the government and state, and in America there's a lot going on in America. That started like with the period you're talking about then, but it's still going now. Well, do you think America is going through some kind of like a bit of a revolution or a change at the moment?
Well, I'll start by saying it's just a privilege or a lifetime really to have represented the UK out there, and how fortunate. I've always been a bit of a US political kind of nut, really from afar, watching from afar what's going on over there, because it's so different to our political system. So to have been able to like live and breathe that, but in an observational capacity, that was the really special part, because as a diplomat, you and as a UK government diplomat, you don't take sides or preferences from a political perspective out in the US. Your job essentially is to build relationships, gather insights rather, on both sides of the aisle, and just make sure that there's strong relationships everywhere. So when a government inevitably comes into power, you're set on a good footing then from a diplomatic perspective. So it was, as I said, privilege of a lifetime, but also so fascinating. So I was the Deputy Consul General for Los Angeles, but I represented the UK in California, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and Hawaii as well. And Arizona and Nevada were real kind of swing states during the general election. We didn't know which way it was going to go. So I had the privilege of, going out to Arizona, meeting the governor, the secretary of state, and then both Republicans and Democrats as they're gearing up to their campaigns, similar with Nevada in Las Vegas as well. So I remember going to Las Vegas for the caucus, the Republican caucus, when they were deciding between Trump and, all these different candidates at the time. And just being in that room when it was decided that Trump was going to be the Republican candidate, with the supporters of Donald Trump and him on stage, to be there and witness that was fascinating, as was it on the Democratic side to go to some of their events and their activities as well. As you can imagine, Southern California, much more blue, for instance.
So you kind of had a front row seat in some incredible moments in American history, because it seems like there's so much, the news at the moment is just something different happening every day. But you've had a kind of front row seat to have been witness to this, firsthand.
Yeah, and there's always common ground, you see. This is the thing. They might, from an outside perspective, you might think that there might be conflict in certain policies, and there very well might be. But the role of the diplomat is to always find that common ground and ways to work together. And there was plenty of room for that on both sides of the aisle while being out there.
And then, do you think the British and America have a different approach to diplomacy? I mean, I feel like the Brits always have this kind of long-standing thing of being very cautious and listening and taking things in, a bit more kind of like a bit more reluctant to step forward too quickly until you know the score. Whereas America, it seems, from an outsider's perspective, maybe a little bit more hot-headed or kind of seem like a little bit more decisive about stuff. Is there a big difference between British and American diplomacy?
That's a really interesting question. I think it depends on the country and it depends on the diplomat and what works for the right audience, in depending which country. And the thing of being a diplomat, you almost have to kind of mold yourself and be personable to whatever and whoever is hosting you. But however, still having that integrity of who you are and who you represent as well. So I think it depends on the individual. There's no one diplomat, I would say. So I'm from the South Wales Valley. I'm a state school educated person. Growing up, I didn't know what a diplomat was. So I don't know this mentality of this idea rather of there being a certain type of diplomat, be it in a country or within the UK. I don't buy into that as much personally. I think it just depends on the person, really. And a good diplomat can build relationships with whoever, really, is my personal take on things.
That's great. I think great transferable advice to any kind of walk of life or any kind of career, really. And then what do they make of the Welsh accent in Arizona then,
Oh
Lara? How did that
gosh,
go?
you can imagine it's such a gift, I must say. So I also worked in New York about 15 years ago for an investment bank, and it's a gift while you're overseas. I will say that you'll
Yeah.
remember. Well, it's a gift, and is it a curse? I don't think it's a curse as long as you make a good impression because people remember you because of your accent, essentially.
Yeah.
For me, I've always found it a gift because people remember you and you stand out a little. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I did American Studies at Swansea University. My year abroad was in Amherst in Massachusetts, at UMass, and I had a roommate who was from, I think, Queens in New York, and his friends used to phone up to hear my accent, like I was his butler or
Oh,
something. It's
really? That's
incredible.
brilliant.
Then they thought I was like
I
waiting on him hand and foot.
Yeah, my friends who were English used to lean into it while I lived in New York. Instead of saying, "I'll tell you a story," they say, "Let me tell you a fable." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, that's not." So yeah, I've been witness to some of that myself as well.
And people listening to this and maybe comparing your role and your life experience in that job to maybe stuff they've seen in pop culture. Is it West Wing? Is it House of Cards? Is it anything like that?
No, that's drama. It's dramatized. I think it's just fundamentally, diplomacy is about relationships. It's about forming friendships, professional friendships. That's not to say a lot of the time, but the kind of yeah, I think some of that is like it's drama essentially on the television screens. However, there obviously were some pinch me moments being a diplomat in Los Angeles. When I met Snoop Dogg, for instance,
Oh, wow.
I'm a huge, and this is, try not to name drop. There's a very serious political diplomacy that's happening, but there's also some amazing cultural stuff. The soft power is also really important. And Snoop Dogg, the first thing he told me is how much he loved the Queen, the Queen's number one fan.
That's
So
brilliant.
it's this kind of wow, again going back, it's the soft power as well as the kind of political power. So it was the Snoop Dogg moment. I was there when Gareth Bale signed for LAFC as the kind of dignitary there representing the UK, and being a Welsh woman who was obviously tremendously proud of Gareth Bale as well in his international career. That was really special. So it definitely comes with some special moments, particularly in a post in like Los Angeles as well.
Well, there you go, folks. Get yourself on the psychology course at Swansea. You might just meet Snoop Dogg one
Exactly.
day. Well, let's go.
Exactly.
Let's go right back to the beginning then, Lara. In the early days when you were a kid, were you keen to learn, inquisitive? What was your approach to the whole education thing and learning?
Yeah, well, I had a Welsh language education, so I'm fully bilingual. Again, I think that was a tremendous privilege. There were small classroom sizes. It kind of taught me about my heritage and culture, and the language being such an important part of that. And it instilled a confidence in me, being a Welsh speaker from Wales. They put you on the stage from an early age in the Welsh language schools, to go on the Eisteddfods, which is these big national cultural events where you sing, dance, recite, and all of that. So I think I was extremely fortunate to have had that confidence instilled in me from an early age. And then you mentioned Swansea University, and I just felt so supported in that university. And the people I met there were friends and are friends for life. And I think again that helped build my confidence as well. So I think I've been very lucky in the education that I've had.
And then in terms of, growing up, adolescence, etc., did you have kind of a childhood ambition? I know these things change as time goes on, but was there something that you wanted to be when you were a kid?
Well, this is where I'll be fully transparent. I didn't know what a diplomat was. I didn't know what a diplomat was growing up. As I said, I went to a state school in a lower socio-economic kind of background area. And so I didn't know what a diplomat was well into my career, until about 5 years into my career, when I lived in New York, and I used to help the consulate in New York with some events. I was working for an investment bank, but that's how I first understood, oh, this thing called diplomacy, and you can represent the UK. So as a child growing up, I didn't know the opportunities that were there in the big wide world. Is the truth. I went to Swansea to study psychology. I was thinking of becoming a child psychologist, but then I had some communications experience while I was in the university, and then that led me down the path of communication, public affairs. It was just, I stumbled upon it essentially, my career. And that's always been my advice to people, is that particularly for my journey, it hasn't been linear. In no way has it been linear. And I'm thankful for that, because I've learned things along the way, and opportunities have come along the way as well. So you know, you don't always have to have it all planned out, is my perspective on things. Experience can go a long way, I think, as well.
That's great advice. And in terms of choosing a university, that's quite difficult for people. I know there's a lot of people listening to this who might
Yeah.
be kind of
Yeah.
that thing where you get all the brochures and you don't know where to go. Obviously, for you, Swansea, how did that come into contention?
Yeah, yeah. So Swansea, I think it was just open days. So I went to a few open days, and I really liked the campus feel. Again, it's depending on what you want personally out of the experience. Some want kind of inner city, kind of big cities, some want slightly more rural universities. But for me, I went to the open day at Swansea University. It was by the beach, which was glorious. I think I was very lucky that I went on a very sunny day in Swansea. Um, and I really liked the campus feel, and I loved the student village as well. And the course, the psychology degree had a good reputation there. So for me, it was a mix of the course, the location, and the campus. And when I finished, actually, when I graduated, I did work in the marketing team for a little while, attracting the next
Oh,
generation of students. So I was going around all the higher education fairs around the UK to kind of say, come to Swansea. And I would always say to them, it's the beach experience, it's the lifestyle, it's the social experience, as well as a very good academic program that's available there as well.
and Swansea offers such a diverse student community. Do you think that's kind of helped you along the way when you've been dealing with, different people from different cultures and walks of life in the job that you do?
I hadn't really thought of that, but yes, I would say so, because I remember in the halls of residence, I had each term a different international student living with me, which I hadn't thought of linking those things before.
Hmm.
But in the first term, I had a friend from Canada. And then the second term, it was somebody who came from China. And then the third term from the US. So that is, again, people from diverse backgrounds, different cultures as well. And we'd have a lot of fun as well, because the friend from Canada was like, well, we kind of say things this way, you kind of say, all of that kind of cultural differences. So yeah, that was great exposure. I hadn't really thought of that before, but it was great exposure.
I think that's really important as well, because it seems, I don't know if you feel the same way, but a lot of social media and a lot of the news at the moment seems very much pushing people back towards tribalism, our country versus someone else's country, trying to do the best you can for your crowd. But it's only when you meet people face to face like that, and you have human experience and, with people like that, and you learn their stories, that gives you a fuller understanding of other cultures, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. While at the Foreign Office, my post in my job before being a diplomat in Los Angeles was leading the communication network around the world. That's 280 posts.
Yeah.
It was leading the campaigns function within the communications directorate. So I had to work with what we call locally based staff in China, Japan, Mexico, different European countries. And that has been one of the best experiences, of my career, of, yes, leading this team, but learning from them. Okay, they might have been more junior, but they know their media landscape in Mexico, in Shanghai, in Brussels, and having those different cultures and different professionals and their expertise. That's a big part of the diplomatic network. The Foreign Office diplomatic network is using that brilliant locally based staff on the ground.
So in terms of social things and extracurricular activity, Lara, did you get involved with any of that when you were at university?
Yes, I did. So I supported, I don't know if you remember while you were there or may have come after, there was a student counselling service called Nightline. And it was run by student volunteers and the welfare officer at the university. And essentially what we would do is we would get trained in counselling, just that listening piece, and as students. And once a week, we would go to a certain location from 8 p.m. till 8 a.m. and man the phones overnight to offer support to students who needed it, who needed to talk to someone. And I was the promotions officer for Nightline. So essentially, my role, as well as the volunteering for the counselling part, was to promote it. This is the telephone number. Should you need to talk to someone? Should you need any help? And that was just one of many things that the university did to support vulnerable students. So yeah, that was the kind of main kind of extracurricular activity that I was involved with while I was there.
And that's really important as well, because I think, a subject that's come up a few times in this series is that sometimes you can feel a bit lost as a student when you step from kind of security of your school friends to go up to the next level and go to university. You feel like everybody else is making friends and you're the only one that isn't. But it's important to know that there's help at hand, right?
Absolutely. And everyone's so different, right? I've mentioned that in Student Village, I made lots of friends and I feel so fortunate. But there's also a lot of introverts that go to university, neurodiverse individuals as well. And I think it's really important to have that safe space and have that support to help with the transition. And Swansea University definitely has that. Something that I've been open about throughout my career is seeking help when needed, particularly when I've been in leadership positions. It can feel very lonely at the top. And it started at university where I would get quite anxious around exams. And I approached the university welfare team about that, and they had the support available to kind of go to a separate room rather than the big halls to sit your exams, that kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So there is help and support within the university for those who might, have anxiety spells from time to time. And that really did set me on good stead throughout my career. Because, I do not think it's ever a weakness in saying I'm finding things a little bit difficult at the moment. And it's having that support to get you through it so things don't get worse, essentially. And Swansea was a great advocate for that.
And let's talk about your course. So psychology, what kind of drew you to psychology in the first place? And has it helped you in your role in diplomacy in terms of being able to, I don't mean necessarily read people, but I guess it gives you an insight into how people are thinking.
Yeah. Definitely. And I'm just such a contradiction because I love the sciencey bits. So I love learning about the brain, the amygdala, the hippocampus, all of that stuff, and the effects of drugs on behavior. So I love the sciencey stuff. But I also absolutely love the more kind of humanitarian kind of elements of things, or humanities elements of things, rather. That's the social psychology, as you mentioned, and how people behave. And that has put me in very good stead then, again, throughout my career, the social psychology elements, particularly a career in communication. So when I was running communication campaigns, it's so important to kind of have that think, feel, do, how people think, how people feel, to get them to do things, particularly if they're public information campaigns, for instance. So the degree in Swansea, the psychology degree, it's brilliant because it gives you that foundation of the science and the technical elements, but also the more behavioral psychology elements as well. And I'd say I've used them both in my career.
And are there any lecturers that have left an indelible mark on you or still have a special place in your heart, Lara?
Yeah, so my dissertation supervisor, Simon Diamond, who's got the best Dr. Simon, the best name ever, he and memorable at that as well. He's a behavioural psychologist who I believe is still at Swansea University and has done a lot around gambling addiction. And the kind of social psychology behind that as well. So he was a great dissertation supervisor and a supportive supervisor. And I've still kept in touch with other elements and departments within the university. So when I was in Los Angeles, a professor from the law school came out to talk about AI and human rights, for instance. So I've still kind of kept some relationships in different departments as well. And it's great to see what they're doing on a global stage.
And also, I think one thing that was big for me was Bev Evans and the team at the.
Oh, you knew Bev?
I love
Sorry,
Bev.
yes.
She was like my surrogate
Brilliant.
mother at university, and she looked after all of us. She's an absolute legend, and it wasn't
She's
just like
fantastic.
she's an amazing
Yeah.
person. She kind of for me embodies Swansea University,
Yeah.
really.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's not just the lecturers, is it? There's the entire faculty team and the staff are important in your overall experience at university, right?
Absolutely. And I'm so surprised but glad that you mentioned Bev, because I knew how much she meant to the alumni from the school, and the work that she did on the recruitment piece as well. She is, as you said, more on the administrative side of the university, and just there's so many like her there. So that's a really important part. And what I will say, talking about what we mentioned earlier about not having a linear career path. My first communication role after university was the stint I did with student recruitment, going up and down the country saying, come to Swansea, it's that marketing piece. It was only for a few months, but that gave me enough experience to then get my first communication role for a consultancy and an agency. So Swansea gave that back to me in my career as well. And then there was the blow of 2008 and the financial crash. And I loved this communications consultancy role, but there was redundancies across the board during the crash, and I was affected by it. And I thought, well, what next? And two things happened. Swansea took me back for a few months to do the kind of student recruitment, marketing, communications. So again, they looked after their alumni. And it was Bev Evans actually said, have you heard about the Mountbatten programme?
Oh, wow.
What's this Mountbatten program. She said, well, a lot of my students have gone on to do this, and it's essentially 1 year work experience in New York City for graduates. And I went for it and got it. So again, Swansea University, I've got to be thankful for giving me that support post redundancy. And for Bev, who said, try the Mountbatten program. And that was such a formative part of my career internationally, doing that year work experience in New York City.
Amazing. God bless Beverly Evans. That is
Yes.
a thing that we'd like to underline here on this podcast. And it's interesting as well because, what you do is such an interesting thing. I wonder why, if people listen to this right now, they might be asking, well, what kind of course is the best course if I wanted to go into that direction? Is psychology the best thing to do, or can you do a range of different things and end up being a diplomat at the end?
It's varied. It's varied. Of course, the traditional route was PPE at Oxford or Cambridge, and I'm so glad that the pool of diplomats is far more diverse than that. That's a great option and hugely kind of accomplished. I'm not doing any kind of disservice to the individuals who go down that route, but it doesn't have to be that route. Psychology is a good option because it's understanding people. But my old boss, who was the consul general, I was the deputy consul general, he was an economist.
Oh, wow.
Coming into the Foreign Office, so he came through that route because there was an economist program. I know a lot of individuals who've had law degrees, geography degrees, and have gone into the diplomatic service. So I think there is a range of degrees that you can go into. It's just how you use them after, essentially. And it's that additional experience that you can sometimes get within the university as well. That's helpful.
So, it sounds like you're quite a proactive person, Lara. Is that the case? You've got to, sometimes you hear this phrase about you make your own luck, but would that apply to you in terms of you have to be kind of on the front foot with things a little bit and make things happen?
Yeah. So normally when I get asked, what is the career advice that you would give to people who are about to embark on their career? It's the journey's not always linear. I don't know how many times I've said that, but for me, it's really important. And it's the whole don't limit yourself piece, which I think is what you're saying about the proactivity. I didn't grow up with any role models that were diplomats. And I don't know if it was something to do with it. I was very fortunate in my education in Swansea, but also the Welsh language education, that I had that confidence instilled of who you are and feel confident in that. So I think, it's the proactivity piece. It's very important, but don't limit yourself. You can get imposter syndrome. I remember the first time that I was in a meeting full of ambassadors and I was given the communication handling advice during a crisis. And I was thinking, these are like these ambassadors, and I'm just from, the Rhondda Valleys, didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge. But I just kind of told myself, no, you deserve to be here. You've got the role, you've got the experience. So it's for me, it's like telling people, please don't limit yourself, even if it can feel a little bit, a little bit scary sometimes or unsure. It's not to limit yourself. And yes, as you mentioned, the proactivity piece is very important. I was doing all sorts whilst in university, as well as the counselling service. I was working with the university when they'd have stalls at the National Eisteddfod to talk about the university and all of that stuff. So proactivity is definitely an important piece.
And you make a really good point, actually, about not feeling like, belittled by the fact, I grew up in Devon. So sometimes when you come to work in somewhere like London, or you talk about New York or Los Angeles, there's something about, and this is, talking directly now to anyone listening to this or watching this who is maybe from a rural area, you've just as much right and just as much ability to be doing things as someone who might have lived in London for 15, 20 years. You know what I mean? Maybe you have more, you can draw from your local surroundings and your experience and make something good from that maybe someone who's lived in a city their whole life might not.
Definitely. And it all comes down to confidence, and whatever you can do to help build up your confidence. I had it through the education system, but you can also get workplace coaches and things like that to help you with your confidence. Because what I've noticed throughout my career, the most confident person in the room isn't always the most intelligent person in the room. Essentially, just because somebody says something with conviction doesn't mean it's correct. So if something's inside you and your gut is saying, based on my experience, I'm not too sure about that. Not in a confront, you have to be confrontational, but it's just putting your head above that parapet and having the confidence to come forward and say that. And that's what I've done, in my career. Well, two of my role models were a job share partner at DEFRA when I was at that department, the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Department. It was one of my first meetings in front of the Secretary of State, where I was going to give some handling advice around a communications campaign. And I knew all the answers, but I was in a room with a lot of officials who'd been there a long time and were a lot more confident than me. And I didn't speak up as much as I should have. And the job share partner pulled me to one side after and said, Lara, we need you to be a little bit braver in that room. You know the answer. You know the policy inside out. You know what advice to give. And that almost felt like a permission for me to go for it, essentially. And then I did. Whenever I was in the room with the Secretary of State, I would give the advice, and I built up, a lot of trust and a lot of a positive reputation then for doing that. So it's that confidence piece. And sometimes it is the role models taking you to one side and saying, go for it, essentially. I think that's really important within your career, just to find that confidence within yourself.
And let's give that role model a name check then, because that sounds like an important bit of advice for you in your
So there's
development.
two. Yes, there's two. That's Claire Jennings and Alice Holmes, who then went on to be the communication directors at the House of Commons, and they did all the communications around the state funeral and all of that, and during EU exit. So they are the ultimate pros, in communications. And they're in the private sector now, doing communications for a large law firm. But that was Claire Jennings and Alice Holmes, who were such big supporters. They trusted me to build a campaigns function from scratch at DEFRA to expand the reach internationally in our communications and all of that. And the other role model who I'm in awe of really is Dame Karen Pierce, the former UK ambassador to the US. She is the diplomat of all diplomats. She is the most impressive professional I have ever met, politically astute, fantastic at kind of hosting and that personability and building deep-rooted relationships, knows the policy inside out from national security to defence to trade. So she's this kind of diplomat that I just was this complete awe of, but also had the time for us, for the people that she led. And I remember her visit while she was the ambassador to our post, and she spent an hour and a half with me talking about my career. This is the ambassador to the United States, and she's spending an hour with me to talk about how she can help me in my career. And she also spent time with a big round table with all the staff in the consulate as well. So that is has been a huge role model, because you can be at the top of your game. You can be respected by presidents, prime ministers, brilliant negotiator. And for her to still find time for the people, just, hugely impressive.
Oh, that's amazing. And, my other half is in PR, and she always says that she loves crisis comms. Do you enjoy the crisis stuff more than you do the kind of day-to-day, everything's going well stuff, Lara?
Well, yeah, I'm very similar to your partner. Absolutely. I think there's something wrong with me sometimes, because I love a good crisis. But when I dig deeper, not to psychoanalyze myself, but the rule of a good crisis, if you're good at crisis management, is you've got the processes in place already. So it can actually feel like a very controlled environment despite the uncertainty, because you've gone through the processes and the preparation beforehand. And you haven't got other things that is distracting you. You can focus on the crisis at hand. So I've worked on many a crisis. I was sent to the Maui when the wildfires happened in Maui to help the Brits who'd lost their passports and their belongings to get back to the UK. I worked on the comms team when we had to have all the chartered flights from various countries around the world when COVID happened to get the Brits who were stranded around the world back to the UK. And, I've worked on so many different crises, and I do enjoy them because if you've done the work beforehand and enough prep, it can feel quite a controlled environment.
What do you think is the best decision you've ever made in your career, Lara?
Oh gosh, the decision. So there's been a few. So I mentioned the redundancy that I had in 2008 during the crash. So again, going back to Bev Evans, taking her advice and going to New York and doing that time in New York, I think was fundamental in broadening my horizons and my work internationally. And from then on, my career has had an international focus. So that was a positive kind of piece. When I came back from New York, I got transferred to an investment bank in London. I didn't like it. It was not the same culture. It wasn't the same environment. And I was slowly losing my confidence. And I made the very brave decision to leave that role. It was a good role and on paper, but it wasn't doing anything for my well-being. It wasn't doing anything for my progression, and it was knocking my confidence. So what I did then is I came back to Wales for some time, worked in communication consultancy back in Wales, built my experience and confidence back up. So I think that was a really important part in my career, because sometimes if something isn't working, instead of being miserable, you've got to just be brave and make that decision and just switch lanes or that kind of thing. So I think that was an important decision. And then joining the civil service obviously got me to where I am now. So there's been a few different crossroads, I would say.
And also, I mean, you make a great point there. Sometimes something that can, on the surface, look like a reverse or something that's gone against you can actually open up a door to an avenue or an opportunity you might previously not even considered.
Absolutely. And I've found that throughout my career. I've gone for roles. I'm in a brilliant role now, but I've gone for roles and I've not had them. I've not got it. And I've been very disappointed. But then, as you mentioned, something else has then opened up and you think, oh, well, actually, this was meant to happen to open up this pathway. So it's trying to deal with the knocks and trying to deal with the disappointments and knowing that there might be something more positive around the corner.
And is there, or has there been a point in your career when you've kind of felt that you've made it? And what was that point?
Yeah, so there's been a few, because I hope I've still got a bit of runway left in me, in my career. But a few, what I would say, oh my goodness, from where I've come from, this is where I am. And I think it was my first meeting at number 10 Downing Street, going through those black doors, was surreal, to say the least.
What's it like in there,
Again,
Lara? What's the interior like at number 10?
yeah, folks often ask this. It's just like office space when you get in there. It's an impressive building, but it's functional. It's a functional operating a building. I must say, as a cat lover, I was very taken by Larry the cat as well. So that was another part. As a personal anecdote, that was interesting when you go and you see a little cat running around the place, and then the Chancellor walked past me, so that was also quite surreal. So that was having meetings in number 10 and working with number 10 on an international communications campaign to support small businesses to export. That was a very kind of career defining moment for me, I would say. And then there's other moments like leading the global network in the Foreign Office of Communicators, to run communication campaigns. That was pretty special. Being in the same room as President Biden for a big conference in the US was pretty special. That doesn't happen very often. So there's been some special moments throughout the career. Hopefully some more to come as well.
Absolutely. And if you could meet your student self in Swansea, what advice would you share about confidence and paths not yet anticipated and the journey ahead, Lara?
Yeah, so the advice I would give to myself back then is there's a really exciting road ahead of you that you wouldn't have even thought of when you started, your education and when you started your degree. Um, it's using that confidence and really solid kind of foundation that you gained whilst at Swansea University, and using that and remembering who you are throughout your career. It will be the most important thing. Do not try and be anyone else than yourself. Do not feel inferior if you feel someone has had more experience than you or come from a different type of background. Hold on to what you know is real, and the experience you've got, and just hold on to that kind of integrity throughout. I would say I'm a proud Welsh woman. As you can tell, the accent has not gone. I've worked around the world, and and this is staying because this is who I am. And I would tell that person to, keep at it, and keep true to yourself, and just seize every opportunity that you can.
And then final question, Laura. You mentioned this at the beginning that you're just coming to the end of maternity leave, and this has been a theme
Yes.
that's kind of popped up a few times in this series about obviously women having careers and also having to pause a career to bring up children and so on. How has that been for
Yeah.
you, the whole maternity leave thing, and how do you feel now on the eve of kind of returning to work?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really important question. I must say, it is a little bit of apprehensiveness because it's juggling childcare and a career, and I do not think that's easy. So it's gonna be finding a new rhythm. And I would hope that I will have people around me as I have tried to be around the teams that I've led, meaning I've tried to be supportive, or I have been supportive of women who have come back after maternity leave, who have wanted to job share. Big advocate for job shares. I think it's brilliant if you want to go down that route, and compressed hours, that kind of thing, and flexible working. So I would hope that the environment that I'm operating is reflective of the environment that I was trying to create while I led teams. I think that's really important. And also, I think being just a female leader, if I was to give, a bit of advice to any female leaders of the future, and I would say this for anyone, male or female, leadership can be very lonely. It can be a very lonely place. The further you get up your kind of career trajectory, the less peers that you have around you, and the more eyes and expectancy that you have on you. So I think it's finding that support system. They may not be directly within your team. They might be in another department or another organization. But I think it's really important to have that peer-to-peer support because leadership can feel a very lonely and isolating place sometimes. So I think that's really important, is finding that support as well. So I think some of the kind of the people that I mentioned to you earlier about the biggest impact in my career were women as well. It was Claire and Alice who did the job share and supported me, in the civil service, and it's Dame Karen Pierce who is, the creme de la creme of all diplomats. Those role models are out there. And you can be like Dame Pierce, you can be top of your game, but still, support others and not kind of cut the ladder after you. You can still kind of keep the ladder there and support other women to kind of rise as well. So I think that's really important to me.
Well, that's fascinating. And listen, it's been brilliant to chat to you. Thank you so much for your time. A fascinating story, and best of luck returning to work and everything. Brilliant to meet you, Lara Hallett. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy.